keep it alive. Through these lines I write, I keep it live cause I thrive. I might just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares. Nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling them flares. They can't catch it, it's havoc. I rip to a tear, switch a scenario. My stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in, full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursuing.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anti-Media Radio, once again with your host Nick Burnaby here on UCY.tv. Thank you guys for tuning in and welcome to the show. I'm joined by a special guest in the studio tonight. Manny, how you doing tonight, man?
Oh man, I'm great. I'm glad I'm joining you at your headquarters, and it's nice to bring LA and coming into San Diego, and it's really a pleasure to be with you.
Cool, man. And you've been one of our most awesome callers, basically. You've called in almost every show, right? I know that you missed a few days last week, man. We were like, dude, where's Manny at? We were like missing you, man. So glad that you're able to join us here in the studio in San Diego. And we're also joined on the show tonight with our co-host DB Schwartz. How are you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing good, Nick. I'm glad to see Manny got into the studio. I wish I could be there to meet him too, but yeah, just up here, not as freezing as it was, but watching some crazy stuff happen right now, and starting to realize that this Paris thing may actually end up being a distraction from something even bigger slated to happen tomorrow. And we can get into that a little bit later if you want.
Yeah, man. The Paris ordeal has been a pretty huge thing. We're going to talk about that a little bit. We might as well go into that right now. Manny, since you're joining us tonight and not in LA, and since you're down here in San Diego, why don't you, if you want, give us your thoughts about what went on in Paris with that whole terror attack, the repercussions, the causes, the reasons why it happened, or what do you think?
Well, sometimes it's kind of sad in a way. I was kind of bouncing it around, wondering. I wonder if somebody was trying to fabricate something, which I'm not really sure what, and all that. And it's just the timing and and who they hit kind of makes me wonder, what really is going on and stuff like that. And obviously, the thing that I noticed is that they've been, killing the cow with the story and all that, and not even a mention of the 43 in Acapulco or in the state of Guerrero, which sometimes, so I'm hoping it's not going to be propaganda again, is basically what I'm saying.
And I think, DB can probably back me up on this, but what we're starting to see turn out in France, at least from recent stories, that we don't know in a year or two what's going to actually happen over there. But we can see what's going on right now, and what we see is a call not only in France and then in Europe about a call to arms. They're bringing in 10,000 military police into France to patrol the streets and protect, quote unquote sensitive sites. And in England, they're mobilizing military police. To me, I think what I see happening is a very 9/11 like scenario where they're starting to react in a way that is very detrimental to the average French or the average Europeans, rights. Just like the Patriot Act was detrimental to America's rights. What's starting to take shape over there in France and elsewhere in Europe is seems to be a very similar type of attitude. And we're going to get a little further into what is actually building up over there. Okay. But I mean, just this move here by the government. I mean, what do you think these guys are going to do? Are they going to try to pull one over like the U.S. government pulled over on us on 9/11, where they passed the Patriot Act, or are they going to? Europeans are known for being more. They're going to turn out in huge numbers to oppose certain things. And so you would think maybe in France they would oppose this kind of stuff. But they just had supposedly 3.7 million people marching in the streets against terrorism, against violence. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, there was those quote-unquote world leaders that were there, Netanyahu, what's his name? A bunch of these world leaders, basically, that were corrupt. We went over this in on Monday's show. About all these world leaders that are just absolutely corrupt, and they're supposedly standing for freedom of speech and stuff, when they've all had their own transgressions against freedom of speech. Mm-hmm. So it's like this huge, it's just like this huge theatrical game. But it seems like what they're trying to do is build this mainstream support for them to start getting more Patriot Act type laws passed in Europe.
Exactly. I'm kind of worried that the whole world wants to do something like this so that we can maybe create martial law around the world,
Yeah, I mean, that obviously is a bad situation. We also have these guys, Boko Haram, out in Nigeria killing 2,000 people. And then, you got bombs from the U.S. blowing up 50 civilians in Syria. I mean, these are all stories that never even got covered, because everyone was so fixated on this whole French catastrophe. And that, to me, is what it's kind of what makes me suspicious. Like, okay, well, they're either just taking advantage of the fact that a bunch of people got killed by these terrorists, and they're taking advantage of that, and they're going to say, okay, time for France to have more NSA-style surveillance, and time for politicians in the U.S., aka the newly anointed Republican Congress. Now they're calling for more NSA powers. They're calling for more NSA spying, and they're calling to reinforce the whole NSA thing, and they're trying to basically gloss over all of the stuff that Edward Snowden leaked out. So
and what does CISPA 3.0 do but really ram the TPP home out of it being a necessity? Because what it's going to do is it's going to be like, hey, we're going to be like China. We're going to have this, not a firewall that blocks, but a firewall that tracks. Everything you do, period, if you do business with the U.S., is forever going to be tracked and stored. And what is that going to do but separate the world into maybe one or even two different competing economic blocks that don't want to deal with that? And we're already starting to see that happen.
That's correct, DB Shorts. And because of Mexico, the United States having so much influence in Mexico, I feel like if we create this more Patriot Acts here, whatever you want to call them, or more martial laws, whatever, I think Mexico will follow along with the United States, because I'm sorry to say it, and it hurts to even say it, but the bottom line is this: Mexico happens to be the United States puppet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's kind of like we kind of see this NAFTA. It's like what happened with NAFTA, where it kind of undermined the middle class of not only the U.S. but of Mexico as well.
Correct.
And Canada.
Yeah, and of Canada. And so what happened is, what's going to happen with the TPP, and for those that don't know, the TPP stands for the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and it's basically a trade agreement on steroids. But more or less, what it actually is it's a big, huge corporatist patent trolling piece of I don't know what to call it. It's not legislation. It's like global legislation, right?
It's like it's like Monsanto's Protection Act, but for all corporations.
Yeah, and you know, there's huge threats to open source technology and open source information with the TPP and all that stuff, which is one reason why I don't understand why more libertarian type of people and more progressives aren't really aware of what's going on with the TPP. It's basically what we were talking about. It's undermining the working people. It's undermining the small entrepreneurs, and it's reinforcing the powers of the huge corporations and, you know, companies like Monsanto and the oil companies and, you know, et cetera. And it also enforces patents globally, more or less, and the copyright trolling, you know, things like that. So big Hollywood and a lot of these industries are benefiting from this TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And, you know, this is a system that it flies in the face of everything that we've been talking about, right? It's what to me seems like it's more centralization. It's like, let's go ahead and put international law into the hands of these few bureaucrats and let them write this big giant law that's going to dictate to everybody how they're going to do their trade, do their living, make a living and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So this is a move in the opposite direction, right? And so, like, this is crazy, man, because now the stuff that we're seeing that's coming from Obama, right? So that last week, we didn't get to touch on it in our last show, but Obama is proposing this stuff, this new, how community college is going to be free, right? And then Obama is pushing for basically universal access to broadband internet and stuff like that.
What's going to happen to costs when the federal government knows that's getting its piece? I mean, community college right now is affordable for most people, and most people can at least get a grant that'll cover a lot of it. I mean, if you can get $1,000, you'll cover your tuition for the whole year at most community college. What'll happen when all these Pell Grants go out is these community colleges are going to subsidize to the students paying nothing, raise the hell out of the tuition, and guess what? It's all taxpayer paid for, so it's another scam, man. It's easy to see what's happening.
I'm wondering why we can't do what Germany did and just basically do free tuition, you know?
Exactly. I mean, that's the way it's going to have to be. What is the community college is going to do is make people take 4 years to finish what they could in 2, because there's not really a time clock on them, except that it is a federal Pell Grant that follows you for life. You can never get away from it. And I don't think people understand that. It's not like there's not going to be loans going out. It's just me and you are going to pay for them.
Yeah. That's true, DB.
Yeah, man. I mean, to me, I had this conversation earlier today with one of my friends, and what we were talking about is that education should be free, right? Because if you take Mexico for a case study, and you see that over there they have completely privatized education, right? So what happens in Mexico is that the people that are in the underclass, I mean, the working class people, for the most part, I mean, those kids just don't go to school. And what happens is you create an entire class of people that it's not that they're not smart. They're extremely smart people. In fact, I honestly believe that the smartest people in the world are probably living in places where they're just they're underserved. They're not able to reach their full potential because of environmental impacts and governmental impacts. Mm-hmm. And Mexico's a perfect case sample of that, is where they don't have their education is completely private. And basically what happens is that most of the poor kids don't actually get educated. Now fortunately, it's starting to change a little bit because of the internet. And anyone that can connect to the internet can go on YouTube and start learning stuff. And then you got a bunch of colleges that offer free tuition. I mean, you can take classes from Harvard that are free online. You know, and this kind of stuff is what's starting to unleash people in these third world. I mean, how many of these cool inventions have you guys seen come out of Africa, out of Asia, out of places that you wouldn't think where innovation is taking place? But these people are starting to get access to the internet. And so, I mean, in a way, it's a great thing. Obama's talking about giving broadband access to everybody. But then at the same time, if you're giving broadband access to everybody, but at the same time the government is controlling it, well, then guess what? The government can censor the shit out of that internet whenever the hell it wants. And so that's the problem that we run into.
Yeah. I mean, and then what they do it totally different here. where they let the tentacles grasp everyone, track you, put you in databases, start, they're going to use it to market to activists. They're going to use it to sway your opinion subtly. I mean, Facebook's already shown that, what we see you look at, we can start steering you another way. And if you just casually are looking at things being posted as the day goes on, your opinion changes without you even knowing it. And they can do that, and they've been doing that.
Yeah, man, and they've brought it to a science. This propaganda stuff, the co-opting of opinion. I mean, let's look at let's go back into history here, right?
Okay.
I don't know about you, Manny, but I know me and DB were involved in doing the whole No War with Syria, hashtag No War with Syria rallies, and the whole movement that was actually a big enough movement that actually convinced these politicians to not invade Syria, at least at face value, right? And so you're saying you were involved in that too, right? Up in LA or what?
Big time.
Okay, so it was big. Like this took place in all these places, and I don't want to take credit for it, but the anti-media helped push that thing to the viral max, and we got it happening. So what happened between then, that was what, a year and a half, 2 years ago, when we said, no, we're not going to go in and bomb Assad. We're not going to go and bomb Syria. But then it was a year and a half later where they said, oh, now it's ISIS. Now there's all these terrorists that we have growing in Syria. Now we got to go in there. And everyone, all the people that were against it before were like, oh, okay, well, now that it's against ISIS, since they're terrorists and they beheaded a couple journalists, now it's okay. Now we're not going to oppose that because now it's justified, and now we've gone head deep, head first into this open-ended battlefront. We don't even have there's not even a timetable. There's not even a basic end goal.
We got brainwashed now.
And we've already spent a couple $1 billion in this new war. And what do we really have to show for it? I mean, it was, 3 days ago we published on the Anti-Media that 50 civilians were blown up in Syria by a U.S. strike. 50 civilians.
But I mean, if we don't go into Afghanistan, then the pharmaceutical industry would probably have collapsed by now. And if we hadn't gone into Iraq, we couldn't have given ourselves time to frack, and the oil would have went to $8 a gallon. There's all these geopolitical games. The costs are always lives. And we don't even understand that we're pawns in that game because we're consumers, because we continue to consume. And it's like full circle every single time we have a show, Nick. The only way to affect change is to stop buying the stuff they're selling.
Exactly, man. I mean, but it's so tough because back 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, when we did this whole No War with Syria movement, we won the battle of public opinion, And this time around, they were like, okay, we're no more playing Mr. Nice Guy. We're going to go ahead and let them see a couple journalists getting their heads cut off. Yeah. And I'm not going to sit here and say that those were staged or that those weren't staged. There's a chance that they were, and there's a chance that they weren't. But I'll tell you one thing, and the same goes for everything that went on in France, in my opinion. And to me, I think this is where we stand as a news organization too, is that it could be either way. So the only logical thing to do is consider both. And I mean, to say that everything that went on in France is by the book and the official narrative is completely true, that'd be naive. But then also to make up these crazy conspiracies that are hardly logical would also be naive. You know what I mean? But there's right. The truth probably lies in between, and just like any other situation, the truth is always somewhere in between. And so to me, I think the biggest factor, and one of the things that was early on in the news cycle that got swept under the rug, but I can't remember where I saw it, but one of these people were saying that according to the guy's social media posts, one of the reasons why he was getting into more militant type of Islamic, extremism was because of what happened at Abu Ghraib. In Iraq, where the U.S. soldiers were torturing the shit out of people and abusing and raping and doing some horrible things. And so, in the end, when it comes back around, I mean, a lot of this, anything that happens when it comes to terrorism and people getting blown up, non-governmental, catastrophes that are man-made. I mean, a lot of this stuff is because it's blowback. It's imperialist blowback, and it's coming back to haunt. And it's just like now where the U.S. has a bunch of these Guatemalan people coming over, and then people are all these Tea Partiers like, why in the hell are these Guatemalans coming over? It's like, dude, you helped fund the genocide in Guatemala a long time ago, and now it's coming home to roost. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So a lot of this stuff, I mean, the media always wants to sell it as face value, as like, oh, these guys hate us for our freedom. They hate us for our freedom of speech. They don't like the fact that we're able to draw cartoons and stuff. It's like, dude, no, stop lying to people. It goes a lot deeper. It's not about cartoons. It's a lot deeper than that. France was just in Mali blowing the shit out of people, blowing people up in Mali. Do you know where Mali is? It's a North African, heavily Islamic country.
Yeah.
And half of the country is, being basically overrun by militants because it's been a colony for the past couple hundred years. So, of course, there's huge blowback. A bunch of people that are like, screw the West, screw the French, screw the Americans. We hate them. They've been robbing us for our resources for 300 years. You know what I mean? So these people are extremely angry. Mm-hmm. What did France do just in 2014? France was in Mali. They basically invaded. They did what we did to Libya in Mali. That's what France did. Mm-hmm. And keep in mind that France is supposedly a socialist government. Their president is supposedly a socialist. I don't know any socialists around here, at least the people that I talk to, that claim to be socialists here in San Diego. They're all anti-war. They're all pro-peace. What is this socialist president of France doing invading Mali? And then who knows how many civilians they killed? Who knows how many people they killed in Mali? And then 10 people die in France, and then 50 world leaders show up. Netanyahu's there marching.
Yeah. And who are they hitting over there, by the way, is what I want to know. Who is over there? It's not Boko Haram in Mali. It's some other group. And then they bombed the hell out of ISIL. I mean, they sent an aircraft carrier, and they're hitting their positions now. And there's super crazy covert wars going on right now because nobody knows whose side's on who. Nobody knows who's running ISIL, let alone what their ultimate goal is and why they haven't gone after Israel yet. And if they're going to try to establish a caliphate, if that's going to be the case. But like I said, man, before at the beginning of the show, this all pales in comparison to what's going to happen if rumors are true tomorrow and things progress the way they're going to. We're going to see a totally different world probably tomorrow.
So yeah, go into that, man, because I didn't have a chance to look into that at all. So let us know what.
Right. So pretty much, tomorrow's the 15th, and I don't know if there's any fans out there of numerology, but apparently it's got some kind of, occult meaning or whatever. But that's besides the point. The point is that Merkel and Hollanday and Putin, and then I guess this Prokhorov guy, this puppet prime minister guy, are all supposed to meet in Kazakhstan and talk about, what's going to pretty much be Putin saying he's not going to accept dollar bills for heating oil anymore, and what that's going to do to these Eastern European economies that have to get heating oil from Russia. Russia provides 60% of the heating oil for Europe, and it's all these countries like Poland and Germany, which is the industrial powerhouse of Europe. I mean, you're talking about a major shift in which a country's going to have to decide, do I want heating oil for my civilian population or do I want to remain a part of NATO? And imagine what that's going to do.
Yeah, Russia's in a very, important geopolitical role, right? And they're able to leverage their natural resources over the top of a lot of these countries in Western Europe. Now the oil price war, and this is what doesn't surprise me, like if the rumors are true, what you were talking about, as far as the U.S. basically slapping sanctions on the West by not accepting dollars, it's not surprising considering the fact that we've already slapped plenty of sanctions on Russia. So I mean, these are just war chess chess moves and stuff like that, economic warfare chess moves that these guys are making. And so, if the Russians may want to punish us and say, hey, if Europe wants to buy, sorry, I don't know if you guys can hear that siren in the background, but it's like really loud in here in the studio. It's piercing the walls. What they're saying is that, if either you want to work with us or you want to work with the West. And unfortunately for you guys in Europe, we supply a very large percentage of your natural resources that you use for energy, for heat, for your cars, for all that stuff. I mean, Europe is still heavily reliant on fuel, on gasoline, on petrol. So, and Russia basically they don't have a monopoly on it, but they have a big share of the market. So they're able to flex that muscle, and they're able to say, hey, what do you guys want to do? You want to work with them or you want to work with us? So this is all, unfortunately, a product of the U.S. is making, right? And we keep on advancing this war in Ukraine, which is on the other side of the effing world. Ukraine is on the other side of the world, and we're over there supplying them with weapons, and we're supplying them with all this crap. And what happened
yesterday, yesterday it came out that on the 10th, the Donetsk airport was basically leveled. There's no flights going in and out at all of Donetsk, which is the second biggest city after Kiev, and that's, close to Crimea. So the rebels have pretty much knocked out any way for, Western Ukraine, if you want to call them, or Kiev, the Kiev government. They can't airlift anything in there anymore. They're going to lose that whole eastern side. And it's just going to keep going and going, and then knock airfields out because the Kiev soldiers are starving. They're not getting paid. So what are they really fighting for, honestly, at the end of it? I mean, they're going to be Ukrainian under this awful puppet regime. I mean, it's going to look like Greece there in a minute, where everything is going to be privately owned. And GMOs are already flooding in. I think I sent you an article a couple days ago, Nick, that Monsanto's setting up a huge test kitchen there. Basically, they know that their days in America are numbered because a lot of cases are coming out with Agent Orange and all the other things that are poisoning and sterilizing people here. And in Ukraine, because it's not Western Europe, they're going to let it go through.
Yeah, I saw the other day in fact, if you guys want to see the story, there's a very, very in-depth story on Monsanto on WTFRLY.com, whatthefreally.com. Anyway, my buddy Baran that runs the site, he did a very in-depth, it was almost like a study, but it was a very in-depth article on Monsanto, and yeah, man, they're now the biggest corn supplier of seeds in Eastern Europe, and that including Ukraine. They have now become the biggest. And it's not surprising. We found out that part of the bailout, Ukraine received basically a bailout from the West of, I think it was like $16 billion or something like that, a few months ago, maybe more, maybe over 6 months ago, and part of the conditions of that loan, of that bailout, was that they had to accept Monsanto's crops, because formerly Ukraine was pretty resistant to growing GMO and using Roundup pesticides and stuff like that. But ever since NATO basically took over Ukraine in their new government, Monsanto has quickly rushed in and become one of the largest seed suppliers in the country. Now, the other thing that we don't want to forget about is that Biden's son is a chairman of one of Ukraine's biggest gas companies. And so this is for that information to be made public is just such a slap in the face to me. It's like, do you guys think that we're that dumb that we don't realize that Joe Biden's son is now a chairman on the board of this Ukrainian gas company? It's like, are you effing serious? But it just shows the disrespect these guys have for us people, because let's face it, the majority of the corporate media consuming public is bought into this whole ordeal, hook, line, and sinker. Yeah. And it's just this younger generation that has been so disenfranchised, and because our voices just haven't been heard. I don't like to make it a age issue, but Because I know Manny, you've been an activist since back in the day, but a lot of people like your peers and stuff are probably not like as aware as you are. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
a lot of them
so,
are
but
not.
the younger people are, because they're not so much entangled into this corporate media nightmare, this whole corporate media propaganda, where they're just feeding us this fear and feeding us this terrorism, and now it's France, and then it's 9/11, and then it's this, and then it's that, and then it's and everyone wants to pass CISPA, and everyone wants to have a new Patriot Act. I mean, dude, everybody back in 2001, 2002, whenever they passed the Patriot Act, everyone in the country was like celebrating, like, "Oh yeah, this is awesome!" Like, yeah, the
Now we're
Patriot Act,
safe.
you know. Oh,
Yeah,
well,
it's the reaction, right? It's always the solution to something that gets caused by whatever power broker. It doesn't matter. If somebody were to legitimately attack America one day, like a country declared war on us, tomorrow we'd be segregated into who's a potential enemy, just like before, and the Japanese internment camps. They'll use anything to push their agenda and their advantage. The question doesn't become what they'll do, but when. And then what it's up to us to do is to make their power null and void, because, it takes guys with guns to make their will, prescient. And we just have to convince the guys with guns to stop fighting for these dudes, because money isn't real. The people are real.
yeah, exactly, man. And to think back, like we go back into history, and I guess this episode tonight is going to be a history lesson. Thinking back to World War II, and the more evidence that comes to light, the more and more it seems like, okay, well, maybe the U.S. knew that the attack on Pearl Harbor was coming, and that's what it seems like. The more and more information that we find out about, it's like, okay, well, they knew. And it's like, well, why in the hell did they let it happen? Well, it's kind of obvious. When you look forward to like Vietnam, and then you look at the Gulf of Tonkin, right? And then you fast forward again. You look at after 9/11, when we went and invaded Iraq on the false pretense that they had created weapons of mass destruction. And then you fast forward just to a few months ago, when that report came out that showed that, yeah, there is weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Oh shit! But we're the ones that gave it to them. So we didn't want to talk about that back in 2002, 2003. It makes you think, like, okay, well, pretty much every time these guys start up these big wars, they're basically lying to us. They just feed us a bunch of bullshit. And so when we see stuff that goes on, like this Paris terror attack, it's become an automatic instinct for many people to say, okay, that's completely fabricated fucking bullshit. They just made that terror attack up. It's a false flag, and everybody, they're just trying to scare the hell out of everyone to start World War III. And I don't blame people for thinking that way, but at the same time, there's no way of knowing for sure, and that's why, to me, it's important to keep an open mind.
Yeah.
To whether, okay, well, maybe the official narrative is basically true. Maybe, yeah, of course, it's never 100% true, but maybe it's like 80 to 90% true. Okay, maybe it's not.
Well, that's why the thing in France kind of reminded me of what happened in, with Sony blaming North Korea. You know what I mean? It kind of basically it brought me the same picture, basically, is what I'm saying,
Yeah, exactly, man. And the whole North Korea thing, I mean, it's like we're getting hit with false flag after false flag now. So it's like the whole North Korean thing was turned into a false flag, even though it was like, okay, like these hackers did it. North Korea never took blame for it. The hackers, the Guardians of Peace is what their name was,
Yeah.
took the credit for hacking it and stuff. And it was never North Korea. And North Korea even said that they're willing to help investigate, who hacked it and stuff. But
They
the
wish they
FBI,
could hack us.
yeah, the FBI and Obama just came out and, no, it was North Korea. And then all these experts that came out, all these cybersecurity experts are like, no, we highly, highly doubt that it was North Korea. And then here at the Anti-Media, we had a confidential source tell us, like, no. A person with inside knowledge told us, no, it was not a hack. It was basically an inside job. So, I mean, it's just like hit after hit after hit. Nobody really bought. I mean, a lot of people bought into the whole Sony thing, right? Mm-hmm. But this French thing, I mean, it's just so manipulated in the media that it doesn't matter. And that's the whole point I wanted to get to real quick, is that it doesn't even matter whether it was a false flag or not. whether it happened the way they say it happened or whether it didn't, it doesn't matter one bit. What does matter is that these guys are going to use this as a Patriot Act for Europe.
It's going to lead to the erosion of more civil liberties, and France really is one of the. It's a beacon, much like we still are to a lot of the world. That's why they get so many immigrants moving there, particularly for political asylum. So for them to clamp down, for them to become Fortress France, because the UK already is, and they're trying so hard to get Germany to turn into that, although it may end up just pushing Germany into Russia's open arms. And that's a crazy thing to think about, that we're in a world where now a country we beat in a war and another country beat in a war, now they're going to shift back over to some other crazy scheme. It's insane to me, and it makes me wonder what countries really are anymore. Are they all just organized Gestapos in their spheres, all making deals with each other, and we're just the playthings?
I mean, dude, trip out on this little tidbit of information. On the anti-media, we covered this. This happened probably. I want to say when did the war on Palestine stop? Like 3 months ago, 2 months ago. Anyway, we covered it a few weeks before the conflict ended, and well, by all means, the conflict is still going on. But when the war ended, we reported that these. Oh, sorry. 1 second.
Well, Nick, you know how it is when propaganda comes out. You know, it's like with the Cuban Five being released and all that. You know, people said, well, they should have stayed in jail because of this and this and this, you know, and it's just amazing how I have people that believe the government and everything they said. I have a lady that a couple years ago told me she believes her government 100%. And I said to myself, wow, this lady needs to get away from it. You know, I mean, it's like 100%, really. I don't even trust my shadow 100%, you know?
Yeah, man, exactly. And, you know, sorry, I got interrupted there for a second, but the thing I was trying to get to, the point I was trying to get to, was that it doesn't really matter whether 9/11 was an inside job or whether it wasn't, or whether France was a conspiracy or whether it wasn't. It doesn't really matter because in the end, these guys are still going to be able to pull through on their propaganda, and they're going to be able to pull through on their legislation. And they're going to be able to pass laws in France that are going to say, okay, guys, well, not only are we already scooping all your data, because if you look at the laws that are already on the books in France, they already have basically the NSA in France, their own version of it that's almost as intrusive as what we have here in the U.S. And now in fact, one of the most intrusive laws just went into effect over the new year. And now they're going to be able to call in, by using all of this sentiment that's been built by this terror attack, they're going to be able to say, okay, let's go ahead and erode a lot more of your rights as well. You know, and most of the people in the country are going to applaud it, just like the people in America applauded the Patriot Act.
Well, what's going to be the response from a group like an Anonymous that, you know, it's very, very prevalent in Europe, and they're not dealing with this massive NSA type apparatus yet because those countries will not, you know, cooperate on that level. So can they be kept at bay by those kind of, you know, cooperatives of people on the street, especially the younger generation that are really like unemployed and have multiple degrees and technical degrees, and they're going to start, you know, they're going to silently rage against the system soon. It's going to be interesting kind of cyberpunk arena over there fairly soon.
Yeah, I think Europe is going to be a very interesting situation, man, because we touched on this a little bit on Monday about how there's a nationalistic, very anti-immigrant, very racist sentiment rising in France, in England, in Germany, in a lot of these countries that are experiencing a lot of immigration because, like you said, a lot of these countries, like in Germany, I have friends that are activists in Germany, man, and these activists, you know, they're able to get away with doing a lot of radical activism over there because they have rights in Germany, and they have rights in a lot of these countries in Western Europe, Northern Europe. but now we're after this terror attack in France, we're starting to see those rights be eroded. So it's like we're getting a squeeze at every end, right? So the activists and the people that are trying to stand up for justice are getting blown over by this corporate media and this government propaganda that we need to go and start cracking down on immigration and cracking down on people that are practice a different religion than you do. And the thing is, to me, man, like, to get back to this French thing, is that how many months ago was it when there was these very radical pro-Palestinian demonstrations going on in France, when the French government banned protesting? The French government just banned protesting a few months ago. And now all of a sudden it's like, oh, we stand for freedom of speech. We're the guys that are the beacon of free thoughts and stuff like that. We allow people to publish whatever they want, except for the fact that you guys went and banned protesting only a few months ago. You know what I'm saying? And this is just the French government and all the other supposed leaders that were there at the march. And it turns out that photo op was just a photo op. It was they weren't even at the march. It was just, it made it, the pictures that were publicized made it seem like they were at the front of the huge ass march.
There was only 100 people there.
Protest. Yeah, there were huge protests going on in France. There were a huge amount of people marching. I'm not disputing that, but the photo op that the politicians used were Netanyahu and Angela Merkel and Angela Merkel and all these world leaders were photographed. That was a staged photo op. There was pictures that came out that were from like aerial view, and it showed that it was just a photo op.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, this thing is just completely being propagandized.
And how does an event like that become illegitimate at all without it being a uncontainable security risk for all those people there? They couldn't put enough security around them if they were at an organic event with actual people in the crowd, because they'd all get picked off or somebody would drop a little, explosive off. So it was completely staged. I doubt it was probably even in Paris. I mean, look, for all we know, that was a movie set.
The funny thing is that on Monday we were talking about the fact that the corporate media was basically in this huge, they created this huge manufactured argument that Obama didn't appear at the protest, at the march or whatever. And it was like the most superficial thing that I've ever seen in the media, but whatever. Either way, the fact is that they were focusing in on that, and they weren't talking about the abuses that are being made by all these other supposed world leaders. And it just makes me cringe, and it makes me it reinforces my thoughts against the media and against the corporate media and the way that the whole pyramid scheme is run. Because the fact of the matter is that these media corporations work hand in hand with the political parties, man. I mean, these are the same type of organizations. They're all corporations. All the political parties and all that stuff, they're all basically corporations. And all these media conglomerates are all huge, giant corporations, and they all work together, and they fix the system, and they make money from it, and they do their thing. And unfortunately, the working class, the people that actually work every day and do fucking laborious jobs, don't end up getting, they end up getting the short end of the stick. They end up getting overtaxed. They end up getting overcharged. They end up getting underpaid. I mean, this is what we've come to realize as reality, man. And I think that's why the anti-media exists. That's why people actually read our stuff, is because there's a lot of people in this situation, man, and we're trying to dig our way out of it and trying to figure our way out of it. We have a caller on from 347 area code. How's it going? You're on the anti-media. What do you want to talk about?
Oh, hi. How you doing? My name is John. I wanted to talk about the Eric Garner case. You
want to talk about Eric Garner?
Yes.
All right, well, what part about the case do you want to talk about? We've talked about this a bunch of times, so if you want to get into some specifics, feel free.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the injustice that the news want to portray in the sense that, giving false information, the mass media brainwashing us citizens, into believing this false information they want to portray when knowing what's happening behind scenes. Like, when that video went viral on Facebook, like I had a picture that I posted up on Facebook that the only person who was arrested in the Aragona case was the woman who recorded it. Because if you look at when William Branton, our NYPD commissioner, who was commissioner back then, the chokehold was illegal for that officer to put on Aragona just because he was selling cigarettes. They should have at least arrested him instead of taking his life. And it seems like there's always corruption every day. And, whatever goes on in the world, I try to open my eyes and, not take it into face value, because I'm a conspiracy theorist, and I love reading about, what goes on behind the mass media, what goes on behind the government, those in the higher ups, and we need to start waking up now.
Yeah, man. We appreciate your call, man. Thanks for calling in, and thanks for listening to the show. But you make a great point there, man, about the justice system in general. To me, it's not only is it like racist, right? Because if you look at the statistics, I mean, the quote unquote justice system targets minorities at a much higher rate. But also, it's very regressive. So if you experience, like, for instance, if you experience a DUI, right, and you're driving drunk and you get caught and you pull over by a cop, if you have the money and you can hire a good lawyer, you can greatly reduce your burden that you have to pay. But if you're not, if you're a person that is just a regular working person like you and me, or anyone, for the most part, you get screwed with this at least here in California, $10,000 later, you finally get out from under this DUI, but then it's on your record. You got this huge thing on your record too.
I think I was just going to say, I think the thing with Garner that really struck a chord with anybody was it's actually watching a guy be killed by another guy. And if it had been anybody but a cop, they're going to go probably to jail for life just based on just that video. But because there's some kind of crazy justification that a dude selling a 50-cent cigarette is enough for that kind of action to take place when he has a taser, he has pepper spray. The dude's big, but he's not that big. I mean, and yeah, you put a guy like that into cardiac arrest pretty easily. He's out of shape and he smokes. I mean, this is just ridiculous.
Let's go back to the Michael Brown's case in Missouri St. Ferguson. Just because he was an 18-year-old black male, and due to his height and size, that the police not accidentally, but gunned him down because he felt intimidated. That was another youth passed away. Another statistic. And it's sad to say that, African Americans have to go through this injustice on an everyday basis. Me, as a Hispanic male, thank God I don't have to go through the stop and frisk. I never had to experience that. And it just shows the corruption that happens in the United States, behind the scenes. Illuminati is controlling the government. President Obama's a puppet himself, and I have my different views. And then if I speak how I feel and how I think, because I'm a thinker, not a worker. I think for myself, and I truly believe that in order to become free, you need to think free, So I like to educate myself and read. I may not know it all, but I do my research. And I thank y'all for having the anti-media on Facebook, because I look forward to information, especially, like, for example, when cops pulling us over, we have our rights. Like with the Fourth Amendment, we have the right to not consent for police officers to search our property and our person.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's what we're trying to do, is like really push the information forward, man, and oppose the injustices, man. There's just so many of them. There's so many injustices. I mean, the foreign policy is one, for me personally, is the hugest thing that like is so effed up, right? Because we're killing, from the time that they imposed a no-fly zone on Iraq to like 91, they killed like 500,000 Iraqis, dude. 500,000 people, many of them children. I mean,
Yep.
through sanctions, through foreign policy. And then all of this 9/11 crap and all this Patriot Act stuff, it all came home to roost. You know, as this war on terror ends, they got all this hardware, they got all this they got all this infrastructure, all this money, all this stuff. And what are they going to do with it? I mean, what we've seen in the past and the last trends, I mean, and it's got even worse since Ferguson went off.
Oh.
In 2014, the amount of departments receiving federal military weaponry
Yeah.
started going up, because as they saw the unrest going on in Ferguson, all these police stations started beefing up. They weren't unloading their stuff because they're like, oh yeah, you're right. We need to disarm ourselves and not be so lethal. They're like, no, we're gonna beef up in case all you motherfuckers want to try to go at us, And that's what all of these, and it's messed up because all of these departments started doing this thing, and they started getting more and more of this weaponry, man, from the federal government, from the military,
From my
and they just continue to militarize it.
Let me say this from my experience. When I was incarcerated in 2009, I was introduced to a book by David Icke, Children of the Matrix. If y'all familiar with it, behind the whole Illuminati agenda, the New World Order, the breakdown of the dollar bill, our uniform commercial code, sovereignty, declaring our own self-govern, and I believe in all that. I may not take a lot of stuff to face value. For 9/11, for example, a year and a half before 9/11 happened, George W. Bush, who was the president at the time, had inside information. Why did he held that before the public even knew, or not even the public had knew about that information? And then they want to blame Islam, Muslims becoming terrorists. But when you look at Timothy McVeigh, who was a Christian when the Oklahoma City bombing occurred, they didn't blame Christianity for it. So it's a lot of bigotry, and I'm not a religious person. I follow spirituality. I look at it as, religious people don't religious people don't want to go to hell, but spirituality is for people who've been there. So everybody got their own opinions, everybody got their own views. They may view me crazy, but it's all right, because the more wisdom I attain, the more conscious I become, the more crazier people is going to view me. And I could care less how people could view me, because I am my own man. I am my own person at the end of the day.
Yeah, man. To me, it's like, this is where I think the debate kind of like splits off a lot of times when it comes to a lot of activists. But to me, it's like, it doesn't really matter whether it's some secretive cabal like Illuminati or Freemasons or anything controlling the government or not. Like, the fact of the matter is that like the entire system is like completely flawed, right? The entire system is it's foregone like the working people that it's supposed to serve. And so to me, it's like, okay, no matter whether these conspiracy, and it goes back to this whole French thing, and it goes back to the whole 9/11 thing. It's like, whether the false flag or not, doesn't really matter, because these guys still got the goal accomplished.
Exactly.
And so whether the thing that happened in France was engineered by the government or it was just taken advantage of by the government to enact NSA type, Patriot Act type laws in Europe,
They win.
it doesn't matter whether it was one or the other. It all turns out to the same game, right? And so I think for us as like, people that are trying to make a difference should be like, I think we should more or less focus on ways of just undermining that system, replacing it with something better.
Exactly.
And implementing ideas that are better than the ideas that are at play. And if at a certain point, if people start realizing, oh, there's something better that's going on, to me it goes back to the whole, back in the day, I don't know if our listeners are even old enough to remember this, but back in the day of MySpace, man, I used to have a MySpace.
I remember.
And then one day it basically just shifted over to Facebook. And I think that's the kind of revolutionary idea that can happen when it comes to the whole grand scheme of things. The whole fact that a small handful of people control all the resources. I mean, that's a fact. Whether you want to call them Illuminati or not, that's a fact. There's a handful of people that control basically all the resources and control all the wealth of the world and all the political power. That's a fact.
MySpace now is
So what we have to do
private
is
company.
somehow combat that entire system and undermine it and make that system fall on its own weight, while at the same time building our way over top of it and overcoming it.
Yeah. One of the things see happen for, to get momentum with a lot of these causes, celebrities in Hollywood need to get involved. I mean, where was the African Americans when Eric Garner and Mike Brown and John Crawford got killed? I didn't see no African Americans come out and.
Well, maybe not in Hollywood, but LeBron and Kobe both wore "I Can't Breathe" shirts. Man, that was big.
Yeah, that
was huge.
Yeah.
You're right though. I didn't see anything from Hollywood, but I did see a lot from the NFL and the NBA.
Exactly.
And that's that's almost as big. NBA, NFL, that's almost as big as Hollywood.
Oh yeah.
And so in a way, it's optimistic, but you're right. We didn't get any celebrity support on this very much.
We need to kick it up a notch, yeah.
Exactly.
It's like even with the Newton High School massacre with Adam Lanza killing them innocent 20 children and 6 adults. That was sad. What happened?
Yeah, man. I mean, all these things are messed up. And that's the thing that's so horrible, and I know the whole Sandy Hook, and then the Boston bombing. I mean, there's like definitely theories and ideas that go counter to the.
There was a big one in Pakistan that just hit. It was like 200 children, and that was real. That was completely real. There's still debate on the others, and that's setting off their own thing now, where they're going on a big headhunt over there now.
Even the one that was in Pakistan, there was one of the photos of the kids that they were showing was a photo of one of the kids from Sandy Hook. I mean, it's just like it's crazy, man. I mean, that's why the whole point is I think they're just trying to confuse people with all these all the conspiracy theories. A lot of times I think are like just out there to confuse people and get them away from the real root of like what we have to deal with. And the real root of all of this stuff that we have to face is like authoritarianism, right? It's this idea that other people can have dominion over top of your life, and they can tell you how you should live your life, or they can tell you that you have to give them a portion of your earnings or of your life or whatever it is. Whether you're in Israel and you're forced into conscription and you have to serve 2 years in the army, or whether you're in the U.S. and you have a social security number and you have to pay a certain portion of everything that you earn back to the government, or everything that you buy back to the government, whether it's through sales tax or income tax or anything. It's all taxed, right? Everyone here pays taxes.
Either way.
So, we're all being victimized by authoritarianism, man. And like a lot of people are realizing, and that's why the propaganda is getting so much stronger. That's why they are able to one-up us on the Syrian intervention and going back into Iraq and stuff, because it's a informational war, and that these guys have a lot of science and a lot of psychologists and billions of dollars of funding to go against us, and all we are is a bunch of crowd-funded volunteers that understand that, oh shit, there's something going on here, something wrong that's happening. And so it's a crazy situation. It's like that old tale of like the mercenary versus like the guy that's actually defending his home. You know what I mean? It's that old tale that keeps going back and gets played back through all the old tales throughout time, all the old stories, man, and we're reliving it right now.
Yeah.
And for that we're lucky, man. For the fact that we have to fight against this authoritarian system, we're unlucky. But the fact is that we're in a time now where we can make a change. Thank you guys for tuning in.
Yo, here we go, through the stereo.